Please look at this before we...
Don't look too close. I just came off the machine.
Yeah.
2 minutes ago.
Hot off the press.
Hooray for last minute.
I quilted and then colored. And I'm Bonnie Colonna, and this is my yellow, green, red, violet complementary color scheme. This came about, this was Vicki really helping me the other day, because she said, I had started this, and she said she was using something that she had started to complete for this class, so I thought, well great, I can color it in, because I did do the coloring after the quilting. I took a class on whole cloth, and so this is my first attempt at using my Statler to create a whole cloth quilt. So it's a robotic quilt machine, so I can, you know, position my quilt patterns, and I love the feather and the flow of feather. So I laid this out, quilted it, and then Heather's previous class of yours introduced me to all these paints and inks, and I've been wanting to ink some of the quilts that I've done. So this is Lumiere, which really is a ink that, or it's a paint. It's a paint, and it kind of gave a texture to this fabric. It lays on the surface rather,
especially if you don't water it down.
Right, I kind of did, and so I had fun inking this in. I learned about whole cloth. I think that I did both robotic quilting in here and then laid in free motion as well. And the trapunto effect, because I densely stippled in this area, makes the design, the quilt pattern pop. I think that creates texture and interest. And there's a lot of, you know, texture in here created by the quilting pattern. I tried to vary the tints and tones and shades out here. I think my balance is, of course, symmetrical. My color scheme would be balanced as well, because I don't know if you agree, but I think I have as much yellow-green as I have red-violet. So maybe it's a 50-50 balance, I don't know. And then in here I tried to vary the shades and the tints to create interest, because otherwise it was starting to get a little boring. Even though it was fun to paint it, it's really, you put a movie on and you're just going right there. But I think I learned quite a few things, and I don't know, I tend to be more symmetrical in my balance, but I think just that in itself, symmetrical creates unity, and the 50-50 two complementary colors is creating balance.
Very good. Now, first I want to ask you about the blending of the colors together.
Yes.
Was this purposeful?
Yes, I would say so.
So when you play with paint, you get that chance to really see what happens when you put two direct complements together. And you can see that anytime those two colors are coming together, you have a grayness. There's a very soft grayness to it, because those colors are trying to cancel each other out. Because that's what direct complements do. So it's a great learning experience.
Yes, and that's what I liked about it. And then I'd add more yellow, and I kind of, because I wasn't thinning the paints as much, I was almost blending them on the fabric, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And so I was just experimenting, because I hadn't used them before, but it was fun.
Very good, very good. And so she's right about how you can get that trapunto effect by leaving larger areas unquilted and then very, very closely quilting behind. Quilting is just, you know, for those of you who are sitting on the edge and saying, I'm just not a machine quilter, jumping into that, it will change your creative life when you realize how much the quilting affects the piece. Now, of course, with this one, the quilting is the piece. It's the whole piece is about the quilting, and then the color was brought on afterwards. And there's lots of different ways that you can color your quilts. Bonnie said she did this one with Lumiere paints. Paints these are acrylic paints that have a fabric medium put in them, and then you heat them, and the heat becomes the mordant, and that mordant is what makes it permanent on the fabric. And what the heating does is it makes basically the glue, which is the mordant in the paint, grab onto the fabric and then not let go. Whereas ink works differently. Ink has a chemical reaction like dye does with the fabric. So if you ink your fabric, you don't really have to heat set it. It's just permanent. Ink doesn't change the hand at all, whereas paints can change the hand. Now for a wall quilt, I like it when my wall quilts become stiffer, because stiff is good for a wall quilt. But if you were to do this on a bed quilt, and there's a quilter named Irina Bloom who makes big bed quilts in this way, and so she uses colored pencils, which don't change the hand either, and then she tops it with a fabric medium, which changes the hand just slightly. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can impart color on your quilts. So let's talk about this as a direct complement. Bonnie has the yellow-green dominating in the border out here, and then we have a section that has mostly just the red-violet, and then the center part we have this lovely mix of the two. And it's not like she has 1, 2, 3 pink, 1 green, 1, 2, 3 pink, 1 green. It's actually, it feels kind of like a natural mix, like these things grew this way. And these areas that still have some green in them are either going to stay green or they haven't turned their pink color yet, something like that. So I think it looks really, really nice. We have also a little bit of blue happening here. And if that happened with the mix of, while you're painting one color on the other?
No, that was me taking blue.
Oh, okay.
I just was
adding
starting to
a little bit of
yeah, I
interest.
needed
Okay.
some other hue to come in there because in fact these, and this is what I just finished this morning, these were almost too saccharine. I had them red-violet and it was kind of like, so then I started to knock them down a little bit with the yellow-green, and that's what resulted. You can paint on the surface of
another color
out.
that's already dry.
That was something else I learned, because those were dry, but when I was looking at them, I was like, oh, it's like icing on a cake. It was too sweet.
So that, yeah, it adds so much sophistication here. So you're not just somebody who's coloring in, you're actually become a painter.
And I think, too, you work on something for a while and it becomes, you get bored with it in a way. And so I think today was my final look at it, and I thought, uh-oh, this isn't, so I think with a fresh eye, you see different things each day.
Right.
I worked for a while, and then I'd go away from it.
Now, did you use black at all in any of your paints?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so
I
you have no
used white.
shades. Right.
I have tints.
Right.
I did use some white paint.
Right. So the darker areas.
Some gray.
Okay.
So I got tones.
So you have tones. So the darker areas, did you use gold also to get these darker?
Well, that
one
one Lumiere paint had a
that has the gold
in it, which was lovely. Because as that dried, it gave this.
There's an olive paint that has a gold undertone to it that really tries to separate, and you can get some really good.
And as you're painting it, you don't know what's going to happen until it dries, and then you see this gold. So that was fun.
Nice.
I like the paints.
Oh, I agree. And the paints are actually more versatile than the inks.
I think so too.
The inks are a little harder to use.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about it as a direct complement. What do we think about the balance of color? Red, violet, yellow, green is one of those complements that they generally say you should use more of the red, violet, and less of the yellow, green. But we always talk about breaking those rules. So here she's broken the rules, and she's using about, I want to say, close to equal, but I still think there's a little bit more red, violet. I think that it reads a strong yellow, green because the outside border is yellow, green. But I still think there was a little bit more of the red, violet. So what do you guys think of the combination here?
I think it's very good.
Very good.
Because and the reason I think so is because she has pulled yellow-green into the center, and so it's not just about the border being yellow-green.
Right.
And so her use of color in the different designs, because you can even kind of see a little of the yellow-green in the pink, the 4 pinks. Areas.
Right.
And so, the outside.
So she's creating unity by mixing those colors
creating
together.
unity, but it definitely stands on its own. It's just.
And I don't even know how to articulate this exactly, but like this, everything just pulls you to the center, and it almost, I just see movement in the middle, the way you've alternated the colors, maybe? Is that what happens? It just feels like it's pulling you right in.
I agree with you. I think the center is very important in the fact that she has very distinct areas of yellow-green playing in there. Anytime you have, you stack color, so this is mostly one color, this is mostly the next color, this is mostly the first color, this is mostly the second color again, you need to make sure that you create relationship. So the fact that she had both of those colors in here makes sense that this is happening out here. Or if you add a new color out here in the border, you need to make sure that color is somewhere in the center. Yes, a color in the center that's not seen anywhere else, you need to make sure you add it back out here on the outside edge, whether it's as the piping or some little inner border, something like that. The background fabric here has some slight mottling on it, and I think the mottling is blue. It's like a pale bluish.
Yes, and this
Right.
is a batik. You can't see because it's quilted. so-
Right, right. But I think that helps make sense of the little bits of blue that we're seeing elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do you think the little bits of blue that we're seeing elsewhere makes it feel less like a direct complement, or do you think it's standing quite strongly as a direct complement?
To me, it feels like a shadow.
Very good.
Which
I
is
agree.
okay.
I agree. Anybody else? Okay, very good. Nice work.